Shanna Gamble, Bureau of Meteorology.
Sharon from Meteorology.
Tropical Cyclone Fina has started impacting the Coburg Peninsula today.
What is the cyclone Fina? There were charging. What is the
Over the past 24 hours, Cyclone Fina weakened to a Category 1 system and started moving south. Overnight, Croker Island recorded 190 millimetres of rain. Most of that fell in the early hours of the morning. Early this morning, McClure Island started recording gale force winds, and these gales with wind gusts up to 120 kilometres per hour are continuing on the Coburg Peninsula today.
Can you repeat that?
Yep. Early this morning, McClure Island started recording gale force winds. And these wind gusts up to 120 kilometres per hour.
And there are 120 kilometers.
Are continuing on Coburg today. So today, a tropical cyclone warning remains in place for communities in the northwest top end.
Area.
Early today, the cyclone warning area was extended to include Darwin and the rural area. So some of the communities in that warning area include Minjalang, Warrawee, Millakapiti, Pelangimpi, Warramiyanga, Darwin and the rural area, including Bachelor and the Cox Peninsula, and Dundee Beach.
Area.
The watch area has been extended south of Darwin to Dundee and Wadair, including the Daly River mouth. Maningrida and communities further east have been removed from the cyclone watch area. These areas of cyclone warning and cyclone watch will change as we update our warnings every 3 hours.
Every 3 hours.
So looking ahead, Tropical Cyclone Fina is expected to re-intensify to a Category 2 system as it gets closer to the coast. Heavy rain and strong winds will continue across all of the north coast and extend further inland and west into the warning area over the coming days.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Heavy rain and strong winds will continue on the north coast.
Region.
And extend further inland and west in the coming days.
Angarawi ilo kapi kapara kapne mora nonupi.
Those northern coastal communities, including the Tiwi Islands, are already starting to feel the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Fina.
Ara kamara waramu kapu mu. Dra ara abidan andra wonitaka.
And these conditions will worsen during today and into tomorrow.
Dra wonitaka to go to from Japana amda ningani Japana.
While the weather has been quite calm in Darwin over the last day or so, conditions will also worsen in Darwin in the early hours of tomorrow and into tomorrow evening.
Ara ka jiladi ara kapne bota hoja ningani star mara rikita pora e bol ningani Japana. Dra ningani abunuda kapwa kapdawan area.
Gales of around 90 kilometres an hour are expected in the Darwin area during tomorrow morning, but more likely during the day tomorrow.
Can you repeat it again?
Yep. Gales of around 90 kilometres per hour are expected in the morning tomorrow, but more likely during the middle of the day and the afternoon.
Adra gale force wind. Abu wonitaka 90 meter kilometer. Dra chukatru murai. Abe
It's important to be aware that before the cyclone impacts, you can expect to see thunderstorms with damaging or even destructive winds and heavy to intense rainfall before the cyclone hits, and that could extend as far east as Groot Island.
Before adra wonitaka apne wakana apne munake lightning amda thanda kindrawe inda apnu ta adra wonitaka abe ngamara gotalan mo.
The worst of the conditions in Darwin is expected to be during the day tomorrow and tomorrow evening in particular. The worst of the conditions. The worst of the conditions in Darwin are expected to be during the day tomorrow and into tomorrow evening.
Adra wonitaka dra intensify karna agare tapna wajagare tapna apne kal naji tapne.
There may be periods during the day where conditions seem to ease, and this is typical during a cyclone event, but it will be temporary, so do not assume that the danger has passed until you have been advised that it has.
Wajang aramu ilo kap kurapole. Wajang apna kamera kape block mudu nunake BOM. Ara umamle Bureau of Meteorology. Purara advice room ara.
So just to recap on the winds will strengthen to 100 kilometres an hour with stronger gusts of 120 kilometres an hour in the warning area.
Andra wonitaka dra chukatru 120 miles an hour abe dra chukatru andra wonitaka.
Destructive wind gusts of 150 kilometres an hour could develop during this evening in the warning area as the system nears the coast.
Can you repeat it again?
Yep. As the system nears the coast, destructive wind gusts of over 150 kilometres an hour could develop.
Adra wonitaka gara apne gira kape bura apne dra 150 miles kilometer andra wonitaka.
Outside of the cyclone warning and watch area, severe thunderstorms with destructive winds could develop as far east as Groot Island.
Ke adra ura won mare ingare bada amda thanda kam ngamara Groot Island.
A flood watch is current for much of the northern top end.
Ara kape golwa the flood kape ara golwa.
Daily rainfall totals of 200 millimetres and more are expected in this flood watch area.
Ara kape adra pagata amda uljaga ram bukum ingadi gokon gabe flood waters.
Flash flooding is possible, particularly around coastal communities.
adra ara pagata amda nage uljaga ram brahme abun mandre ingadi pagata ina bukum flood ibra.
A storm tide of about 1 metre above the highest tide is expected around Minjalang and can be above normal in other coastal communities over the next couple of days.
adra uljaga bukum ingadi na flood gabe namara gab ujuma gab khawbe peninsula.
And dangerous surf with damaging waves and coastal flooding can be expected around the warning area as well.
Nara bukum mura namna ingadi wave amte thara vapur namna winga gab murabune.
So stay up to date with the Bureau warnings on the BOM weather app.
Ke kaja waram apna ngamara gabra promoter ganuna ke BOM Bureau of Meteorology gabra udama ma.
Thanks, Richard.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Kirsten Engels, Incident Controller, Northern Territory Police.
Dada naga mamda Bureau of Madre Bureau udama ma.
So today is day 3 of our active cyclone response. Cyclone Fina is beginning to show their presence along the northern islands now.
Can you repeat the first one?
So today is day 3 of our cyclone response.
Ningana wa yedruma dai wa kinga numna saklan watch wa.
Cyclone Fina is beginning to show their presence on the northern islands now.
Na adra uljaga Russia Indra Imba in Tulabia Gabwan Nanabe.
Schools in Minjalang and Warrawee, Perlingimbi and Milakapiti have all been closed today.
Gabamara Nanabe, Blakapre, Warrawee, Minjalang, he got in Fort Ulugara school closed Bumbri.
Tomorrow we expect to see impacts starting to be felt in the Darwin area. We are preparing for all scenarios, but we have to keep monitoring the track of this cyclone. We are standing up an emergency hotline, 1800 888 901, and that will be available from this afternoon. Now I'll speak about separate areas. Starting with Minjalang and Warrawee. So we are asking the residents of Minjalang and Warrawee to pick their place of shelter and to be there before darkness tonight. We know there are about 280 people in the Minjalang community.
280 population.
The emergency shelter is open. It's been open since last night, and that's at the school.
School po nunga shelter po na uldaga
I can tell you that Minjalang residents have been through this before. They're prepared and they're ready.
ara kamera abra rumo ka minjilam uragal mampa adrena uldaga
And I can tell you that the community has plenty of food and water.
urara puro ainga dengiri pure po na uldaga bani
There is a shelter open in Warrawee. It's been open since last night.
ara ka be wayo para organize po ngari shelter po ara kamana
Again, this community is used to these events and is ready and prepared.
urara red bumara kamana po adrena uldaga
And they have plenty of food and water.
ye para po ngari ngiri amda po wani
I'll move to the TIWI Islands.
ye wala braga pe TV alena
Residents in the TIWI Islands are asked to find their place of shelter and to be there before dark tonight.
ara ka be amara ka wara ho urara brumga mel braga pe kora pale pire na ka uldaga ka bunta ingre
The ferry between Darwin and the Tiwis is no longer running.
adara February na bune hoyo urara cross pu madra kapala
Again, the TIWI Islands are used to this sort of event and they are prepared and ready.
akama da bda wara ho ngawa used to adra na ka uldaga
Now I'll move to Darwin.
ye giliade na
As the bomb said, we can expect to start seeing the winds and rain in Darwin tomorrow.
ara bom na ke mumle fear of meteorology abra adra uldaga rata ka ngam giliade
Today is your final prep day.
na awa prepare dum na before na ke uldaga bune
We expect to tell Darwin residents to take shelter. We expect to advise them to take shelter tomorrow.
ara kabra dab daga be giliade amare giliade ara very po adra uldaga ma kare bune
Based on the information we have, we are comfortable that your homes are able to withstand the event.
ara giliade urara very ara na uldaga bune ingre ura mura korampale
If you have concerns, we ask you to go and find somewhere that you feel safe to shelter.
ina galo try ka binyani korampala fu nuna ke cyclone fu bandra korampale
When the storm impacts are starting to be felt,
ara sara bi madra uldaga amda
we ask you to park your car, find your shelter, and stay there until you are told it is clear to go out.
pakam da majela muraga sabi saibri na uldaga
Today, schools, shops, and businesses remained open for the most part.
ara ka giliade shop amda school nana open
Tomorrow, some businesses may choose to close.
ora ega ba koji ujum bra ro ana ka uldaga
The MVR office at Goida Road will be closed tomorrow. Do not go there.
na ke in be phone na ke license MPA rogal open bra gonji brum na
Tomorrow, buses will not be running in Darwin.
ke bagara gara giliade ora bas athan bas rogal
We
rogal
want,
kala
we want you to stay home.
Waya brumga dramo pokba daputa
Public shelters in Darwin are not open at this time.
api public shelter gara giliade na kala open prisam
If you feel like you cannot stay at your home, find somewhere safe to move to today.
in bro bebe ga pe angela korapale try ga binyani korapale
There's no need to panic.
adrin bro anane bagare
Just be prepared.
wa waje very haram pu adrena uldaga
The places to go for messaging
e pura message in what message
Include the Secure NT website and the BOM website.
POM Arab meteorology Arab.
Few key messages. Enact your emergency plans.
Ke apn da majala nimna plan buadra oljaga.
There will be rain and wind prior to the cyclone.
Ke indra apn mare ingade pakara amda oljaga.
Do not drive in flooded water conditions.
Adarin very muruga kapi flood area. Rin bijaga pora andra muruga ar kapi fogani.
Let's all together use our common sense and stay safe.
Ara mum nage. Abya naga oljaga.
Thank you.
You said that some businesses may choose to open tomorrow. Does it get to a point where you'll enforce closures?
We will not direct businesses to shut.
Why are the shelters not open?
We're not at. Sorry. Yes, please. So
Can you repeat that again?
we will not direct businesses to close.
Ora kalau direct one business ini bonji.
Why are the shelters not opening?
We're not at the stage of shelters having to be open yet. We're confident that people are safe in their own homes.
Rejim ini atru asmi mara fashion abin rejim ka. Kalau ora ini udah berapa kabar ada ini bukan bukan boleh jangan.
We will continue to monitor and keep people updated.
Berapa monitor mana boleh jangan. Anda keep Muhammad updated.
How will people know when the shelters are open?
People will know when the shelters are open because there will be very overt messaging through all of the media outlets.
Ora kapi media ora boleh anggar ini mana Muhammad kapi urmare ko kapi safe.
Have you got reports from Midgelang and Warrawee? What are the conditions like out there?
We spoke with the police on the ground at Midgelang and Warrawee this morning at 8 o'clock.
Dari mari cuma ara asmi mara fashion apa kapna menjelang amda Warrawee.
They were,
Apa kapna ura madra umma aro apa kapna khata mara madra no on prima aro.
I've heard reports that the weather is increasing, but they are still calm.
Free boleh aro nana boleh kalau kapna maro. Apa kalau kita andra boleh jangan.
Can you explain? There was a little bit of confusion this morning. What's the difference between a cyclone warning and an emergency warning, and what action people should take when each one is issued? Because there seemed to be a little bit of confusion around that this morning.
I'm going to hand over to my NTES colleague for that.
Thanks very much. Wayne Snell, the Chief Officer of the Northern Territory Emergency Service. There has been a little bit of confusion in relation to this, and if I can make it very clear to everybody.
Ara mama na ara boleh jangan.
That a cyclone warning issued from the Bureau of Meteorology is an indication for people to then watch what's going on much more closely around them from their environment and watch what's happening in the messaging space, and to take action in relation to their emergency plan and in relation to the things that they need to do to make sure their family is safe, to make sure that the final preparations are undertaken for the security of their home, and to make sure that they've got their communication systems ready in preparation for a potential outage.
Hari mari ini orang Amerika berjumpa kapi Warrawee amda roka. Ura orang kapi mana warning. Apa being prepared, being kuat ada boleh jangan. Ada CYCLONE FINA.
When that transitions to an emergency warning, that is the time to undertake your final activities to make yourself safe, to put yourself in a position where you don't need to move, where you don't need to travel anymore, where all of your facilities are secured and all of your family knows exactly what's going to happen next. That is the time to wait for the impact and to stay hunkered down for that period of time and wait for the all clear.
So just to clarify, we're on a cyclone warning at the moment in Darwin, but we're not on an emergency warning. Is that
Correct. Correct.
I mean, this might be a question for another time, but should the terminology be changed there, because it doesn't seem to be a confusing situation?
So there are conversations going on around Australia at the moment. The Australian warning system is a system that's adopted across all of the hazards. So, and it's only been developed into the current model over the last couple of years, quite extensive consultation. So there's still a little bit more work to be done in that space, because not all of the other organisations that are outside the emergency management realm have been brought into that conversation fully. So a little bit more work to be done in that space. For all of us, sorry. For all of us, the important part is to know that when the Bureau of Meteorology issues one of their clear pieces of communication, the next piece of communication that you have is, what does that mean to me and what should I do now? So the Bureau tells you that there's an issue and that there's a weather problem coming towards you, and then the next piece of communication under the Australian warning system tells you what you need to think about and what you need to do.
Issue for America,
Might be a question for Shenna. What are the tides doing when the cyclone's expected to come towards Darwin?
As a tropical cyclone approaches the coast, it can cause the tide to be higher than it usually is. Yep. As a tropical cyclone approaches the coast, it can make the tide higher than usual. How high that is will depend on the timing of the coastal crossing and the tide height at that time. So the current advice is that at Minjalang we could expect to see the tide to be 1 metre higher than the highest astronomical tide, so the highest tide that you ever see there, 1 metre higher than that. But at other coastal communities, although the tide will be higher than normal, it is not expected to be higher than the highest astronomical tide. I will also say that with the worsening conditions we can expect to see damaging waves and the coastal areas becoming quite dangerous.
So that tide that's going to be 1 metre higher than normal, does that pose a storm surge risk?
So the tide that I'm talking about for Minjalang being 1 metre above the highest astronomical tide is the storm surge risk. And so at Minjalang we do expect the tide to be higher, 1 metre higher than the highest astronomical tide.
और कब हमारे मजमू का मिजला आदर बुआ আমরা উনি জায়গা আপনি মারে ইংরে পকাটো আর মই হেড মারা আঠা বড়ি ওয়ান মিরা আর বহারা
So does that pose potentially any danger? Or?
Might have to defer to Tess about the impacts on that. Yep.
So at this stage, we have flood watch has been issued for a number of areas, but none of those predictions at this time are likely to reach minor flood warnings. Also in that space, 1 metre over the highest tide should only affect very low-lying areas, a median in the coastal area. At this stage, there are no flood watches. There are no flood warnings issued. There is only a flood watch for a number of areas, and it's not expected to reach minor flood warning levels.
यहाँ पर कभी मैंने नॉन पे आर फ्लड वाइट नैना पूरे यहाँ पर खालो पर नैने वह फ्लड वाइट पूरा आरा ये तो वही मगरम को आरा पुन्ना के फ्लड अपने ही गिरा कभी मोरा नॉन पे
We have reviewed the flood inundation maps
ये फ्लड गिरा पूरे अपना दबाई में
for a 1 metre over highest tide levels,
आरा 1 meter आरा move यहाँ आरा वो कौन
and it indicates that it will only be minor inundation in very localised coastal areas.
कभी हमारे कभी रूम में गिरा कभी बिना आरा वो यहाँ वो कौन है कि हाई था
Yesterday there was still a possibility that some communities could be evacuated. Is that potentially still on the cards or not?
At this stage, there are no planned evacuations for any communities.
But यहाँ पर kalau beli ini nana be, pada bakamah ujung jabla.
Wayne, heading into tomorrow, what's your key piece of advice for residents in affected areas?
The residents in the affected areas for the Greater Darwin area,
Pada
the residents in the affected areas in the Greater Darwin area,
our resident from down.
Could I just ask that you say in one complete sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. The advice for residents in the Greater Darwin area is to enact your plan, act early, make sure that your valuables are secured and that your home is secured, and be prepared to look after yourself for the next 3 days.
Our even naga madani ni prepare naram arola essential stuff ki anwa narama nalame kunji naram probably pre naga bunita ka ingra bunita nani ndapna mane.
Last question.
Wayne, what kind of preparation is happening in places like Dundee Beach, which, like the TIWI Islands, doesn't have a cyclone shelter and is perhaps more at risk of FINA intensifying to a Category 3?
So at this stage, the advice for preparation for the Greater Darwin area is the same for Dundee Beach as what it is for all of the other outlying suburbs. It is to prepare your home correctly, have an emergency plan for yourself and your family, and make sure that you have a means of being able to receive communication so you understand what the risk is and what actions you may need to take as a result.
Our hamara ka bitandi, berharap arwa rora ingra chile de, berantara ulta और अपने ऊपर और जिला की टांडी, आबरा इनका और हमारा इनका प्रिपेयर नता मंडल में पुहा Thank
Thank you, everyone.